it could be death as well, but I'm lucky enough to have survived. And so I have almost, today's the 18th, so I have 78 days clean. Yeah, that's pretty awesome, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I have a year clean from the harder drugs that I was doing, but I did have what's called a relapse. It's when you go back to using drugs. So that was a few months ago, almost 3. So, but I mean, everything is okay. I am getting help. I'm in a program that's really great. It's really good to surround yourself with people who can be positive and influential on you and not kind of drag you down. And for a while, that's what I was doing. And I mean, I'm not saying that I wasn't toxic myself. I mean, I'd be the first one to be like, yeah, let's go do this. Like, let's pour a round of shots and smoke some weed. And, you know, I'm not gonna glorify it or blow it up. But, you know, it starts with the little things and then it gets bigger and bigger. And then you know, I was homeless for a while. So I kind of took a step back before I took a couple of feet forward. So that's just where I'm at.
So how did you like even get involved with drugs in the first place?
So it started just going to random parties here and there during school. I would go out on a Friday or mostly Saturday nights because I ran cross country. So I couldn't go to parties Friday night. I mean, not to say that I didn't, but I did. And I would just do the little things here and there. I would take, first it started out with 1 drink, then it was 2. Then I'm gonna finish a bottle tonight. I'd set goals for myself, and those are not the right goals to have, right? Like, so I would just kind of push my limits. And so when I graduated high school and I had these freedoms, and as my freedoms grew, like being able to drive or having money of my own or being able to stay out later, I would take advantage of that and I would just buy my own product or my own substances. And it just got to the point where I was full-blown addicted, using every other day, every day kind of stuff.
So why did you get involved with drugs in the first place?
Why? So there's not really a why. It's just, I mean, it just kind of like evolved. Like as an addict, looking back at it, I'm not going to say I had a traumatic experience when I was younger, or even a couple years ago, being older as an adult. It was just kind of, it led from one thing to another. And slowly, like, the partying progressed, and then my reasons changed. It wasn't just hiding from my, you know, upcoming reality, you know, graduating. Oh gosh, I'm going to college. I'm going to graduate college one day. I'm going to be an adult. I'm going to have to pay bills. I'm going to have children someday. Things that would stress me out. One day I just gave it a try. I just decided, oh, I can handle it. I thought, oh, I'll be the one who can break my addiction. It wasn't on me. It wasn't ever on me. I mean, it was. It was kind of like getting on a roller coaster and deciding that 3 loops is too many. You know, the Titan is just a little bit too extreme to go. But I don't know. I just kind of one day decided that I was gonna start using. That's not something that you would think that you would ever just decide to do. Like, I just was surrounded by it.
So what was your, like, you said there was like a roller coaster Titan moment, like, oh, this is too much. What made you suddenly go from, oh, this is fine, this is perfectly okay, to this is way too much?
So my health was getting horrible. It took a toll really badly on my mental health. Things were getting harder. My grades started slipping. My health was deteriorating. My skin was horrible. My hair was horrible. Work was hard. My attitude was horrible. Running became really hard. And it started to take a toll on my relationships. A lot of my friends said, you know, what's going on? What's going on? And I always felt so alone, even though I had all these people reaching out to me. I felt alone, and I isolated myself, and I didn't want to deal with anything other than drugs and alcohol. Like that's how bad it got. That's all I surrounded myself with.
Was there any moment in particular that was like, okay, it needs to stop? Like anything, like a come to Jesus moment?
So my come to Jesus moment was probably probably waking up on the street when I was, a few years ago when I was like 26, 27 years old. I woke up on the street and I was like, man, I'm just gonna go get high. And then I was like, wait a minute, like I need to go eat breakfast before I do anything. Like I need to, and then I just kind of thought like, this is getting horrible. But I think it really kind of dawned on me when I was about 17 years old, when I woke up hungover one morning and I was like, this is not how I felt last week. This is not how I felt before. And I'd have to wake up, and I remember going to a party during spring break, my senior or junior year. I think it was my junior year. I went to a party the night before a cross country practice, and I got sick the next morning, and I couldn't finish my running. So that's when I kind of started to notice that things were bad. I noticed when I had a problem when I was about 21, 22, 23, and I couldn't afford my habits anymore. But I would make ways to do that. I would, go drinking with people who would buy me shots. And I mean, it started out with, I'm just gonna go drink with a couple friends, or I don't have to drink when I go out. I'll just go out to be social, and then they would buy me drinks. And then it got to the point where I would start to feel bad because I couldn't reciprocate the kindness that I was being shown. Like, it always sounds like it's super nice to buy your friend a drink, but you never know who you're putting in. You never know who you could be putting in a bad position.
So when did you first get yourself help for your addictions?
So I never went to rehab. I never went to like counseling. I guess when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 23, I really started to take it seriously. I started to take my mental health a little bit more seriously. I got medications for all that. And it wasn't that I never took it seriously, it's that I didn't know. And so within the last year, I just got out of jail actually, about almost a month ago. So that's kind of what it took, going to jail for like the 5th time, but the 3rd time in a year and a half, to wake up and say, no, like no more. Like I remember sitting there right before I got out of jail thinking my life is at a standstill. That for the first time in my life, I'm not running forward and I'm not pedaling backwards. I'm just here to make a good decision. That I wake up in the morning and I have like a set routine and that I could stick with that if I just tried. And so since then, I've kind of stuck with a program that surrounds me with people who are positive and encouraging and who want to hear about what I'm doing. It's not like I'm reaching out into thin air for help anymore. And I'm not going back to the dope house, and I'm not going back to the streets. I'm actually making productive decisions. I pray daily. I read a lot now. I do a lot of the things that I used to do. I try to work out again as much as I can. I also have a job for the first time in 5 years, a real job, not just like a little part-time volunteer work. Hey, come work at my store for a day or two kind of thing. I have to wake up and wake up with a positive mind frame, encourage myself a little bit, and then just kind of call on my higher power, or my sponsor, or my friend, or somebody who has offered themselves to be there for me.
So what's your support system like?
My support system consists of my mother, my sister, my stepdad, my family, and a few friends who know kind of the background of what I've been through. They are awesome. I have a sponsor who works with the program that I'm in. Not like a sponsor, like she pays for things or takes me out and buys me things or whatever. A sponsor, like she is a supportive, emotionally encouraging. She's very awesome. She's somebody that I can call on at any point in time. I called her at like 11:30 last night because I got through with a bunch of meetings for like Zoom meetings and stuff for the house that I'm at. And And that's another thing, the house that I live at an Oxford house. It's a sober living house. So it was a little bit of backstory on the Oxford house. It was founded in 1975, I believe. And there's over 2,000 throughout the country, nationwide, I'm sorry. And so what it is there's men's houses and women's houses. And I live with 4 other women right now. But it's a house that can fill with 8. So we just, we live our lives just like everybody else. You know, I do have a curfew. I can't, unless I like let somebody know that I'm going to stay out all night. So there's a little bit of structure there just for the person who gets out of jail like myself, or for the person who's coming off the streets. And I mean, I get drug tested at random. They watch me kind of like, they're kind of like, we're all just kind of like it's kind of like a sisterhood. We all just kind of hang out and we encourage each other daily. I was actually going to have one of the girls come here with me, but her ride was, she had to go do something else. So.
Well, you're doing great anyways.
Thank you.
So was your support system always this good, or did you have to work to find one?
So no, I didn't have to work to find one. I had to let them in again. I never didn't have a support system. It was that I was unaware of how real all of this was. Drugs are one of those things that kind of take over your person. Drugs are substances that, how did I say it earlier? It was they attack the mind, they harm the heart, and they hurt the body, and they destroy the spirit. So my support system was kind of always there. I just wasn't aware of how strong that was. And I think that was one thing that I would do especially when I was younger. I would test those limits. I would test my boundaries and other people's boundaries. And I would always try to break this mold that I felt like I was constricted to. I felt really, really, really pressured to be a certain way. And that's something that's really typical, not typical, but really common, especially in younger people who are finding out who they are, who are discovering what they want to do and discovering all these new things. The world is so big and the world is so full of all these options for us that you know, you want to run off and do a bunch of different things, but really there's just a path for everyone, right? And I was always running this way and this way and this way. And I would ignore my help a lot. I would ignore people reaching out, and I would just be ignorant to and aloof to the things that people were trying to say. Oh, that's not me. I don't have a problem. I remember one time my friend was like, "You've been drinking every weekend for the past 3 months, Amanda. Like, are you ever going to get help?" And I remember one friend saying, "Amanda, you just did, you know, some drugs on a Tuesday night." This was after I graduated high school. And I said, "So, like, you did drugs last Monday." You know, that's not supportive. That's not helping anybody. But, you know, she was just trying to reach out, and I was getting defensive. So when I came out of jail, yeah, I kind of did have to reach out to people. I did have to set boundaries with some people. Hey, if you want to be in my life, you need to be sober, or you need to be respectful of the fact that I'm sober, the fact that I don't drink and I don't do drugs anymore. And with adults, being an adult, I had to say, okay, like, I had to let go of a lot of people, and I had to let a lot of people know where I was at. And for my friends who weren't using, who are never used, who don't use, I had to let them know, like, hey, like, I'm not this way anymore. I'm in a better place. And I had to apologize. I had to make a lot of cuts and amends to be safe with myself and with other people, because I hurt a lot of people doing the things that I had done. That's just the course that drugs and alcohol take us, is we end up hurting a lot of people, not just ourselves. So some people apologized for not being there for me, and it was never that. It was the fact that I was just running from my problems and stuff, and support was never not there. I wasn't utilizing it.
Looking back on your whole experience with your drugs and addiction, because you're clean now, would there be anything that you would go back and say, oh, I want to change this, like, this is a definitive moment, like, I want to stop or do something different?
No. So are you asking me if I would have never done it?
I'm asking if, like, Is there anything that you would have changed specifically, like during the course of your experience with
I
it?
would have said no. I would have said no to every opportunity. The drinking, I would have waited. The smoking, I would have been respectful and waited till the time and place. And the same with the drinking. And as far as all the street drugs and the party drugs, those can go. Those are the most destructive substances this world has ever seen. It's not just bombs and guns and people, it's drugs and people who get bombs and drugs, you know? Like, it's just, it's, if I could go back, I would say no to everything. Because there's not one experience that I could ever redo. There's not one experience that I could ever relive that would be positive. Because if I were to go back to the time I took mushrooms and got stuck to the floor, I would still end up on the floor, right? I would still be there, but the walls would still be the same and my cat would still be there, you know, and it would just be different. I mean, it would just be a different time and place, you know, what I'm saying.
So how do you think that this whole experience has changed you as a person?
So it changed me then more than it did now. It changed what I wanted to do. So I wanted to study kinesiology, and I wanted to study the movement of the bodies. I wanted to study journalism. I wanted to study teaching and all this stuff. And now I look back on it and I'm like, okay, I could do all those things in one day. I could just become a licensed chemical dependency counselor, right? I could, and I really wish I had known that back in the day. Like, I wish I had known that those were my options. I guess I wish I had known people like myself now then, that I would have had this opportunity that you guys have to get talked to by addicts, by other people like myself who have been through hell and back. It's changed the way I look at life. It's changed me knowing, like, what changed with me with that was I know how precious life is and how fragile it is. There were a lot of times I didn't think I was going to be able to get up in the morning off the ground after a use. I've lost a lot of friends, and that's something I wouldn't wish on anybody. I've spent a lot of time in jails. I've spent almost the last 2 years in jail. The last 2 Christmases, Thanksgivings, my birthday, New Year's, Valentine's Day. I've spent a 4th of July in jail. That was ironic. I spent 2 of those actually. And it's just not fun. It's not a way to live. It's sad to look back on, but it's made me a stronger person and more willing to help people. But the course of drugs and alcohol is not a way to find that out. You know, reaching out to other people because you can, and you don't need drugs or alcohol to do that, because I would always use them as a social lubricant, and you don't need those things to do anything. Like, it might loosen you up for a little bit, but then that's your excuse, that's your fallback every time. So if I could change anything, that would be it. If it made me any different, it made me stronger. To know, like, sobriety made me stronger. To know that I can rely on myself or my higher power to get up in the morning and be strong enough to breach past everything that used to be there. Like, if I could paint you a picture, when I'd be waking up in the morning, I'd have my drugs and my stuff here, and I'd wake up and I'd roll over and I would use, and then I could get up and go, and then I could get up and go look for a job or go look for breakfast or whatever. Being homeless was a completely different experience in itself, because you don't just have your house there. Your house is the entire world, right? You've got your kitchen in Fort Worth, and you've got your closet in Grapevine, and that's kind of how it was. Like, I'm kind of exaggerating, but that's pretty much, like, that's the way it feels when you're walking, 3 miles to use your computer at the library, and then you got to walk 3 miles back to go to your bed. So I feel like a stronger person, though, and only time's going to tell how strong I really am.
Is there any advice you would give to students who are currently addicted to drugs or are considering using any substances now?
Okay. So if you or anybody you know is looking for a release to break the mold of themselves, okay, hold on, let me start over. If you or anybody you know is experiencing these things like drug addiction or is at risk for drug addiction, think twice. Stop while you're ahead and make yourself aware and reach out to somebody. Educate yourself on what drugs really can do to somebody. Not what the drug is, not the effects on the brain, or not the effects on the person, not what they're gonna do, not what mushrooms will make you see, not what meth is gonna make you feel, not what weed can do for yourself, your health, but what they can do to your life. I wouldn't recommend going down Lancaster and Fort Worth to see all that. But remember that there are ways that this lifestyle can end, and that is in drugs, or in the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol. I'm sorry. That's jails and institutions. That could be death. It might not even be the drugs that kill you. It could be the people. You never know what somebody can say or do that could just kill your spirit or your heart. And the abuse that you're inflicting on yourself is a fraction of what can happen via somebody else. And the lifestyle that it leads to is just not something that anybody should experience. So if you or anybody you know is addicted to drugs, using drugs, there are hotlines that you could reach out to. There are places you can go. I would definitely recommend just talking to somebody older than yourself who's experienced life, who might know where you're coming from or what you're getting into or what you're experiencing. Because there are people who haven't even used drugs that I talk to all the time. Because emotions are real. Sorry. Emotions are real. Feeling things are real. Going through life as a whole are real. Life has a lot of ups and downs. And there are times when it's so frustrating, but it's better to embrace that and to pull on somebody who is close to you or not just within reach, but close to you emotionally or physically there for you, somebody who knows. So I would recommend just keeping an open mind to having a mind,